Good morning, or depending when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name is Ross, and as always told, I had a voice radio. So today, I am showing you the top 10 cards from Supreme Victors, a very good set that came around in the Platinum era. Now, several of you guys have been telling me, Ross, we want more history videos. Well, consider your wish granted. And if you weren't one of the people asking for these history videos, I think they're pretty fun, so you should definitely watch it anyway. This was the set that came out right after Rising Rivals, which was the last set on which I did a history video. So check that one out in the description. And this was one of the SP sets. The Platinum sets were the SP sets. So if you want to learn more about the SP sets, I have done a video about the SP Pokemon. So do feel free to check that out. I will also put a link in the description. So, this was a very Garchomp heavy set, so it's only fair that we start the list at number 10 with Garchomp. Garchomp was a very fun card. It had a bit of success. It did see some play and actually had a good finish at US Nationals one year. Now this is a stage 2 Garchomp and there's several things to like about it. No retreat cost, an awesome ability whereby if your opponent damages you, you get to choose an energy card attached to them and discard it, which is nice because you could discard things like double colorless when that came out in Heart Gold Soul Silver. Guard Claw's pretty good, 40 for a double colorless, reduced damage by 20 the following turn. And then Speed Impact, 120 for free energy, really was quite nice. Did do 20 less for each energy attached to the defending Pokemon. But this is in the era of SP decks, where they would often use energy gain and have one energy on or fewer. This wasn't an amazing card that ruled the format, but it was an awful lot of fun. Certainly one of the more interesting cards from Supreme Victors, and I'm putting it in at number 10, and I can because it's my list. In at number 9, our first of the SP cards from this particular video, Staraptor FB, but specifically the Lv.X. And really here, it's all about fast call. Now, we do have free retreat, which is nice. Defog is fine and allows you to discard stadiums in play, but really it's about fast call here. Search for a supporter card and put it into your hand. It's like Tapu Lele GX, but you could do it every turn. And of course you had Cyrus's Conspiracy, which was pretty good for these SP decks. A good tech that found its way into a bunch of decks. In at number 8, PALMER'S Contribution. Now, this was a recovery supporter. It's not the most exciting, the sexiest supporter, but I'm sorry, ladies and gentlemen, it was just good. Search your discard pile for up to 5 in any combination of Pokemon and basic energy. Shuffle them into your deck. I mean, it's a slightly underpowered Brock's Grit, but Brock's Grit is one of the best cards that came out of Evolutions. It is a good card, it saw some play. In at number 7, the far more exciting Blaziken FB and the Lv.X. Now, we talked about this in our SP video, but Blaziken FB had the really nice attack Luring Flame. Just drag a Pokemon in the active and leave them burned. But the real star here was the Lv.X. It was a very nice card indeed. A really nice ability that allows you to do, or Pokebody as it was called back then, 40 damage more to a burned Pokemon. Don't forget Blaziken's Luring Flame. And Jet Shoot here, you pop an energy gain, 1 fire energy, and don't forget you can use Cyrus's Conspiracy here to search for both of those cards, and then you're doing 80 damage, which at the time was a lot of the time all you needed to do. It was massively outclassed by Garchomp C when Heart Gold Soul Silver brought back double colorless energy, but for the time being, it was very good. In at number 6, HONCHKROW. Now, there was actually a really good Murkrow here as well. It had the attack Switcheroo. For 0 energy, this was back when we had free attacks, like what have been reintroduced with the Alolan Pokemon. Move a Pokemon tool attached to one of your opponent's Pokemon to another of your opponent's Pokemon. So this was really handy. You could move an energy gain from one Pokemon to another. Expert Bout was really popular back then, and you could do fun things like move an Expert Bout to a really weak Pokemon and then drag it up with Luxray and KO it. It really was quite a fun card to use. And it did actually see play sometimes on its own. There were plenty of people that played Murkrow without HONCHKROW. But I thought we might as well talk about it with HONCHKROW. Now, resistance to fighting is good, but there's many things to like here. The Poke Power ability, Darkness Restore. Basically, if your opponent doesn't have a full bench, you can grab a basic from your opponent's discard and put it onto their bench. Now, maybe you could do bench damage and KO it to get an easy prize. Maybe you could drag it into the active with Luxray and KO it. Either way, there were plenty of things good about this. The other thing you could do, of course, is just drag Pokemon onto the bench so your opponent has no bench space to play an Uxie. Or against Gyarados, you can put a Magikarp on their bench so they've got one fewer Magikarp in the discard, which means they do less damage. And then, of course, Riot. Now, this was quite expensive at a dark double colourless, and do remember it wasn't an SP Pokemon, so there was no energy gain. 30 damage plus 10 more for each Pokemon that isn't evolved in play. So you would play this in an SP deck. You would have 5 unevolved Pokemon in play, so you would be doing 80 for free energy, and then if your opponent had 2 or 3 Pokemon in play that weren't evolved, then you're up to 100, 110. It really did add up very, very quickly. An amazingly disruptive ability, a really quite powerful attack, if expensive, but it did see some play. People used to give me fits with this deck when I played Donphan. Hey ho. It does really deserve its spot, ladies and gentlemen, up here at number 6. At number 5, Cynthia's Guidance, a very good supporter card that just added a lot of consistency. Look at the top 7 cards of your deck, choose one and put it in your hand, and then shuffle your deck. It meant you could search for stuff like double colourless energy, or it could allow you to search for the one Lv.X that you were playing. It really did add consistency, allow you to grab these cards that you couldn't search for in any other way. Of course, you might be seeing a little bit of synergy here in that a lot of these cards are coming back. This, of course, is quite similar to Misty's Determination, except you look at 7 rather than 8 and you don't have to discard a card. But yeah, these supporter cards do tend to cycle around, as you're seeing. In at number 4, Dragonite FB. Dragonite was a great card, ladies and gentlemen. It was primarily played as a counter to Garchomp's CLV.X, because it could get an easy one-hit KO. Energy gain, double colourless energy. You're doing a fair amount of damage. But what's really good here is that you did 80 to any SP. Now, the other counter to Garchomp was Ambipom, but Ambipom only did good damage if there was no energy attached. Garchomp with an energy gain and then discarding the double colourless to attack meant that Ambipom could KO it. But Dragonite would get a one-hit KO on stuff like Luxray GL, or Blaziken, or any number of SP Pokemon, many, not all, but many of whom had 80 HP or fewer. Dragonite was a great card. It was my preferred Garchomp counter purely because you could do a lot of damage to a lot of Pokemon rather than Ambipom, which really was essentially just a Garchomp counter. In at number 3, Cyrus's Initiative. This was a disruption supporter. Flip 2 coins. If either of them is heads, look at your opponent's hand. For each head, choose one card from your opponent's hand and put it on the bottom of their deck. It basically meant you could take cards out of their hand and just slow them down. A lot of people would Cyrus chain here, so they'd use Cyrus's Conspiracy, grab an energy card and a tool, and a Cyrus for next turn, so you could use your Cyrus to get rid of theirs, or energy they've got for next turn, or the Lv.X they've got for next turn, or whatever. Either way, ladies and gentlemen, this was a great disruption card. It saw a lot of play with Sableye, who could search it out and use it as an attack. It really was quite silly. In at number 2, Versus Seeker. Now, you might be thinking, hang on a second, Ross. Versus Seeker's amazing. How can Versus Seeker possibly not be number 1? Well, back then, when this came out, Versus Seeker was not played like Versus Seeker has been up until recently. Versus Seeker nowadays, you play 4, you dump supporters in your discard, you use Versus Seeker as a toolbox card to get whichever one you want. That was not the case back then. We had cards like Uxie and Clado. We had very consistent decks, so we would play 1 or 2 Versus Seeker in our deck just to reuse key supporters. There weren't things like Lysander back then, so Versus Seeker was nowhere near as important. Don't get me wrong, it still saw a lot of play in a lot of decks. but it wasn't the all-encompassing card it is nowadays. It was played very differently. It was a one or two of. It was not the centre of your drawing strategy. But in at number 1, it can only be Garchomp C and Garchomp C.Lv.X. I mean, Garchomp C was alright, but Garchomp C.Lv.X is just absurd. It's one of the best Pokemon we've ever had. Free Retreat. An ability that instantly heals all of your Pokemon SP. No downside, just instant healing. And an attack that, for free energy, but really it's double colourless and energy gain, you get to snipe for 80. Goodbye Uxie that everybody's playing. Goodbye Claydol that everybody's playing. It was such a good card that people would play multiple Ambipom or Dragonite really to counter Garchomp C.Lv.X. It ruled the format. Now, it wasn't until Double Colourless was reprinted in Heart Gold Soul Silver, like I said. Before then it was Blaziken, but this was an absolutely phenomenal card that ruled the format for years and saw play in so many great decks that I've got to put it at number 1. And I'm going to be honest, ladies and gentlemen, this isn't even close. Argue about the rest of the list as much as you like. I don't think there is any argument that this wasn't the best card in Supreme Victors. But if you do want to argue, well, good job, there's a comment section. Go nuts, be nice. Make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at TheWossy, and Twitch at twitch.tv/PTCGRadio for some live action. If you want to support the channel, get some bonus pods, jump ahead in the queue to play me on stream, get some custom voicemails, etc. Check out patreon.com/PTCGRadio. By far the most important thing, as always, look after yourselves until next time. Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.